team, and the three of us have been the face of TIP that have been working on this project. And we've really been looking forward to this presentation. We've been excited to share with you the countywide economic development plan that's been completed and dive into it. So before I do that, though, I did right off the bat, I wanted to acknowledge and recognize the 24 steering committee members that have stuck with us. They've been working with us for over a year, as Corey indicated. In fact, we've listed those folks, the steering committee members, on the first page of the planning document. And I just can't say enough good things about the leadership from the steering committee. And it was county-wide. We had representation. So it was great to work with all of those folks. So I just want to say thank you right out of the gate. So with that, let's talk about what we want to cover today. This is the agenda that we have for our presentation. I'm going to give you a quick overview of all of the work that has been done during a little over a year's worth of time. Victoria and Alex are both going to share with you what's in the plan and describe the contents of the plan. And then I'll come back and I'll talk a little bit about next steps. And if there's time available, or if you'd like to ask questions, we can certainly respond to questions you might have. And of course, you'll hear me say this multiple times, we're happy to meet with any of you or have a longer conversation with any of you about the plan and what's been put together. So with that, let's dive in and let me give you a quick project overview. This has been the project goal. And we've actually shared this slide with every presentation that we've done on this project, because we wanted to make sure to stay focused on this goal, to develop actionable strategies that will build upon the county's economic strengths, address the challenges, and focus on community collaboration. You'll hear me repeat that word many times today, and implementation, just as important. So let's talk about the scope of work that's been a part of this effort. This has been an extensive planning process. I won't take you through all of the tasks that you see here, but I did want to at least describe what's took place in the two phases, the discovery phase and then the opportunity and implementation phases. During this discovery phase, we completed a tremendous amount of quantitative data gathering, statistical data, economic data, to understand what was happening across the county and in the economy. But we also spent a lot of time gathering qualitative information, having conversations with leaders to understand what they saw happening on the ground with the economy. And by marrying those two things together, we were able to identify the challenges and opportunities to the regional economy. And that allowed us to go to the second phase. And under this phase, we identified potential strategies that would address the challenges and opportunities that surfaced. And then we were able to prioritize and then refine them in working with the steering committee. And that's where we have arrived to today. I do want to make sure you know this has been a data-driven plan and a stakeholder-driven plan right from the very beginning. And I also want to make sure everybody appreciates this is a 5-year plan. So all of the work that you're going to hear, all of the strategies and actions and recommendations that are made are intended to be carried out over a 5-year horizon. So with that, I did also want to expand just a little bit on some of the data that we put together as a part of this effort, because the data component really does mean a tremendous amount to us. This is actually a screen capture of a data visualization tool that we built as a part of this project. And we call it the Economic Explorer. And every person that we have talked to that's been a part of this effort, they've all described this as the most extensive economic analysis that's ever been done for the county. And so we looked at population and demographic data, we looked at workforce data, we looked at housing data and industry data, as well as commuting patterns. So a whole host of data points were looked at, historical data, but also the most available data as well. And then we also, though, spent a tremendous amount of time doing stakeholder input. We had over 30 interviews. We did over 8 roundtables on a whole host of different topics, where we heard from dozens and dozens of community leaders about what they thought about what was happening in that specific topic area. We had multiple steering committee meetings, and then we've had multiple workshops as a part of this effort as well, all in it to make sure that we were listening and learning from community stakeholders across the county, Upper County and Lower County as well. Let me share with you something that we have, an infographic that we put together to describe the collaborative framework for economic development in the county. Now, we've taken a hub and spoke approach to this, a hub and spoke model. And this is really designed to break down silos and encourage communication and collaboration. And so you're going to be hearing, we're going to be recommending a county-wide role as well as an organized county-wide effort to move this plan forward and to serve as a convener and as a connector and a facilitator in moving this plan forward over the next 5 years. Now, local economic development entities have an absolutely critical role to play in carrying out all of this work. They will, our recommendation is that they continue to move forward with the missions that they have underway, the work that they're doing, but to utilize them to play to the strengths of each existing organization, each of the unique work that they bring to the community. And ensure that all groups are staying aligned and in communication. So let's go to the next slide. I did want to just highlight a few things to keep in your minds as you're hearing the information that Victoria and Alex are going to share with you. First and foremost, collaboration is going to be absolutely essential to carrying out this work. Now, the strategies and the actions you're going to hear, some of them are going to be completely new. Some actions and strategies have never been done in the county, but are in real need. But there are also going to be some things that have been included that are already underway, and there are organizations and efforts that own those roles and will continue, and they're absolutely essential that they continue to do those things. In fact, we encourage an enhancement and expansion of those types of things. But these are all incremental steps to build trust and lead to greater opportunities over time. Now, the last thing I'll share with you here is this plan is intended to be an evergreen plan. So remember, as I said, this is a 5-year horizon for this plan, but it's designed to be flexible because conditions change. Opportunities surface, challenges surface. No one knew that a pandemic was going to strike, but the community has to be, and the plan has to be prepared to be flexible. And that's what we've done. We've created a flexible framework for carrying out economic development work across the county. And that's what the plan, I think, delivers on. So with that, let me turn it over to Victoria to share with you kind of what's in the plan, what that framework looks like. So Victoria.
Thanks, Jeff. Good evening, everyone. So we can get this moving. There we go. So over the course of the project, and after several conversations with members of the community, the data analysis that we did, a few themes emerged. And then these themes became the plan's 5 goals. The way the plan is structured, we have 5 goals and then supporting strategies and actions for each. The strategies and actions that support each of these goals are intended to increase collaboration amongst organizations within the county, ensure residents have the resources they need to start businesses and develop new skills. There's also focused on prioritizing community investments and funding transparency. And lastly, there's ensuring that the character of the community and the legacy industries of the community are preserved and developed for the future. So with that, I'll dive into the strategic framework in a little more depth. But you all should have received the final plan, which really goes into detail. In the interest of time, I'm going to go through each of the goals and highlight one of the strategies. But if you have any questions at the end, we'd be happy to answer them. We started here with collaboration because we think this is an extremely important goal for the county. Increasing collaboration across the board can actually be one of the most impactful things that the county does for economic development. It's essential to make the most of your available resources, organizations, and leaders because there's a lot of people that we spoke to who are eager to help move the county forward. Part of this is going to involve uniting upper and lower county governments and organizations behind shared goals, but also increasing communication to strengthen the county's ability to be a partner in things like attracting tourism, businesses, and funding opportunities. Now is when you need to start implementing these strategies, and you're going to need all hands on deck. An important component of the strategy and an important component to ensuring this plan is implemented is going to be hiring a full-time employee who will oversee economic development efforts. Everyone here has a lot on their plates, and a dedicated individual is going to go a really long way to move things forward and make sure that all relevant partners are engaged and involved in the process. This goal here centers mostly around economic resilience from the perspective of workforce. The idea here is that the county needs to further develop the tools and resources it has so that its residents can take advantage of job opportunities or start new businesses. This goal is about encouraging better alignment amongst workforce organizations, industry, and educators. And here I'd like to highlight the recommendations related to CWU, because we can't emphasize enough how great it is that there's a well-established university here. A lot of communities would love to have a university like CWU, and it's their #1 priority. So you're well ahead in this regard. The strategy around CWU encouraged the county to continue to find areas where the university and the community can strengthen their partnership. Continuing to build things like internship programs, incorporating live client projects, and supporting youth development programs are some of the initiatives that can strengthen these ties. The plan also explores expanding opportunities for the Business Development Center in the Upper County and continuing to leverage I4IE, since these could really bring huge community benefits. Balanced growth. We talked about growth in Kittitas County a lot over the course of the past year. And from what we heard, because there's such opposing views on growth and whether it's a positive or a negative, it's been really tough for the county to really set a direction and a vision for the future. But we do know that the county has grown substantially over the last decade, and likely that's going to keep on happening to some extent or another. So while this growth might be inevitable, there are ways that you can manage it better and align with your community's goals. To do this successfully, you'll need a strategy to retain and expand existing businesses, pursue target industries that align with your county's values and resources, and develop and redevelop sites to meet business and housing needs. Along those lines, something I wanted to highlight is Bowers Field. This is an example of a great asset that the county has that's ripe with possibility. With appropriate zoning and infrastructure, there's a lot you could do with this space. It would be a great fit for something like light manufacturing operations and could tie into CWU's expanding aviation program. With opportunities like this, you can grow local business, create quality jobs, and develop industry specializations. And next we have community investment. And the way we envision this goal, it's not just about the funding, it's also about the communication and the community building that needs to happen and trust building that needs to happen before that. And Alex is going to dive a little deeper into this one.
Good evening, everybody. Yeah, one of the consistent themes that we heard throughout our stakeholder engagements and in even our own observations was in order for the county to better compete for investment and for talent, there needed to be a greater level of community investment in sites and in places and in the infrastructure to make the county more economically competitive. And so while we didn't try to prescribe exactly what those needed investments are, what we did is lay out some strategies that we feel like create a path for the public sector as well as private sector to not only engage the community and having the conversations around what those investments are needed, but also and also how to go about making those investments and how they're going to be funded. We identified some specific broad areas of infrastructure investment in terms of transportation and broadband utilities and wayfinding within the plan. And we also described a need for really a mechanism, a public investment strategy to fund these. And we referenced an example in Oklahoma City, which has been really a national success story and how they've gone about making community investment, large-scale community investment in their city, which is really based on building public trust and transparency and having those open communications with the residents of that city by public leadership and gaining their trust over a 20-year period to continue making greater investments in the city. Victoria, you're on mute.
Thank you. Lastly, we have preservation. Over last year, we spoke with you all a ton about what makes your community unique, and the character that you love to preserve because you love living there. And so we really made this a priority in the plan. The strategies that support this goal aim to preserve your legacy industries, but also spur innovation around them, as well as preserve the county's character. So as you know, changing circumstances currently threaten farming and present environmental risks, but these risks also offer an opportunity to create a more resilient community and be a leader in the space. An example of this would be identifying and conserving water sources, mitigating wildfire risk, and improving conditions for agriculture. Here, there's an opportunity to not only preserve the county's legacy, but also leverage its existing knowledge base to bring these industries into the future. A strategy we're going to highlight here is county-wide long-range planning. This strategy actually came out of the Upper County Roundtable that we held during our last visit. And here, the idea is that we need to pool county resources and develop a cohesive countywide plan for development. This will include things like transportation, utilities, but even things like tourism. This is another example where better collaboration and coordination will go a really long way in preserving quality of place and expanding opportunities for business in the area.
Super. So let me share with you a little bit about what's going to be the next steps as a part of the planning process. And so let's go to the next slide. What we're talking about now is kind of entering this implementation phase of the planning process. So one of the recommendations that we would make is to encourage you all to do a larger rollout, much more of a public rollout or unveiling of this strategic plan, really to thank and recognize all of the folks that contributed. Dozens and dozens of folks shared their input and their insights with us, and I know they would be interested and excited about what the plan holds, but also we want to make sure folks get excited about the opportunities that are going to be happening in the future and the opportunity to get involved in what's going to go on. Because as we've said, you've heard us say over and over again, implementation is going to be key. Coordination and collaboration is going to be key, and that only gets done when everybody feels like they're a part of this process. And so a larger rollout, we have found, encourages that. So that's something that's on our minds. And then I will share with you that, yes, we are done with the plan itself, but there's going to be multiple workshops. We're going to, in fact, do 3 implementation workshops over the next 6 months, where we'll be bringing together organizations and leaders and a whole host of folks to talk about how this work becomes reality, how it gets implemented, what are going to be the priorities, discuss what partnerships might be available and approaches to assignments, and talk about roles and those types of things to carry the work forward. And so that's going to be taking place over the next 6 months. And I know I also will share with you, whenever we're at this stage of a planning project, I have no doubt you've probably taken a look at and gone through the document itself, and certainly you've received this from the presentation. There are 5 goals here. There's 16 strategies. There are 53 actions that have been identified, and that's an enormous amount of work. And I know it can be daunting once a plan gets completed, but I'll just come back to, this is a 5-year plan. It's always been intended not to be all completed in 2023. This is a lot of work that's going to be done by a whole wide range of organizations and local governments and the community at large to carry all of this work together. And so with that, I'll just conclude our comments once again by saying how much we appreciate the contributions by the steering committee. And we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. And if you'd like to have an offline conversation with us following today's presentation, we're happy to do that as well. So with that, Corey, I'm happy to turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Before we do any questions or comments, I'd like to recognize someone in the room. Dr. Jim Wolpart, president of Central Washington University, is here tonight. Jim, I'd like to invite you to speak on this, as was pointed out by the experts there. We're very lucky to have a university here. So the partnership that we are developing within this plan, I certainly want to get your take on that.
Yeah, thank you, Corey, and thank you all for this exciting moment. I've been talking a lot about the way in which there's so much synergy that's happening and things that are coming together that really can change our future if we choose to do that. Let me say three things quickly. One is that strategic plans can sit on a shelf and be check boxes and meaningless. And that is not what this plan is. It's not what this plan was designed to do. It's not how you all have approached this, and it's not how TIP strategies have approached this. If it's done differently, it can be one of the most fruitful things to really develop a community around where you want to go together. So the way in which this strategic plan was developed was collaborative and inclusive. We were heavily involved in this. We had multiple meetings with the team to help move this forward. The conversations were robust and rich, and so many things that you'll see in here that mention Central Washington University are things we've signed off on and said, yes, we're interested in these things and we'll be working on these things. I'm going to repeat many of the words that they said about the collaboration, the inclusiveness, but also the implementation. The idea is that when you develop a plan, you also have to be thinking on the front end about how it's going to be implemented and how you're going to come together as a community to make sure the implementation is happening. The second thing I'll say is that what excites me most about this plan is the integration of the city, the county, Central Washington University, the businesses, the nonprofits. Together, we can do great things. If we remain in our silos and stovepiped, we're going to continue to struggle with many very serious challenges in this region. So I'm really excited about the way in which this has come together to integrate all of our work. And then third, I'll say the intentionality of this plan is something that is really important. What is happening in this plan is that we are engaging together the most important challenges that we face, that if we don't face, we won't thrive going into the future. So these challenges are being faced proactively, not reactively. And I'll give you two examples, one from the lens of the city and the county, and one from Central Washington University. So I have been trying very hard to recruit senior level leaders to Central Washington University, and they get interested. They're very excited about the vision and mission and where we're headed. And then they look at housing costs and they don't apply. So we're losing really good talent to come to this area because of our housing costs. Now, it's not something we can fix. It's something we need to help with. On the flip side, what I'll say is the conversation we're having with our new chief of staff, Andrew Morse, with Dania Cochran, who is one of the project managers in the president's office, with the provost, Michelle Benvesti, is what are the degree programs, certificates, educational opportunities we need to offer to draw the talent here and to meet the needs of the business. So that's a very different approach than we've taken in the past. But what is the value added Central needs to have to make sure that this region survives? So those are conversations we're having. We are also in the process of developing a strategic plan. We're behind you all by about 6 months. But one of the core values in that strategic plan that will show up in initiatives and actions is authentic community partnerships. That is a foundation for what we will be doing. I'd be happy to answer any questions or share any other thoughts.
Now we'll open the floor to the questions of President Wolpart or TIP strategies. The plan is presented.
What is I4IE?
One of the things that we need to do really to invest in the city, the county, and the region is to do more work with entrepreneurship, really understanding how we can sponsor new businesses, create new businesses. We've done some of that at Central Washington University. There's a reference in the plan to the John Papajohn Center in Iowa. We actually had a John Papajohn Center at the University of Northern Iowa, where I was as well. We actually built out an entire, a much larger structure than the I4IE here that was housed in its own building that really helped small businesses get up and started. Large businesses do strategic planning, cities do strategic planning, and all that stuff was housed in a very large John Papajohn Center. John Papajohn was a donor who gave $15 million to each of the universities to start this. It helped faculty redesign their classroom curriculum so that we would do live client projects. So for instance, in one of our classes in marketing, they did a marketing plan for one of the cities in that area. Didn't cost the city a penny, but they were able to get competing marketing plans from the classroom, different groups in the class, and then they implemented a marketing. Great experience for the students, right? This is real world experience, taking what they're learning in the classroom and applying it, and then having to present it to a real client, and then it got used by the client. So we need to do more of those kinds of things.
Other thoughts, questions?
I just, before we leave, I just wanted to recognize that the collaboration started with launching this plan and hiring the consultants, and I would be remiss if I didn't recognize former Mayor Bruce Tabb's role in that. And I'm sorry he's not here to see the rollout, but I think in terms of next steps, Heidi, do you want to
Absolutely. So what we've learned is support from across the county got us started. And what we want to do is really formalize that support with all of our boards and agencies across the county. So like the folks from CHIP recommended, we're going to do a rollout, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for hosting an event. So March 7th, we are planning for to start out with a state of the community address. And so all of the mayors have an opportunity, and our county commissioner, to talk about what's going on in their communities. And with that, we're going to pair a launch of this plan and a celebration to really look at testimonials for individuals and businesses that really speak to the goals in this plan specifically. So it should be a fun event, and the idea is to roll that out. In addition, what we'd like to do is formally go to each of the bodies, each of the city councils, each of the entities that do economic development, and spread that beyond to businesses and ask folks to sign on to working together to build our future, essentially. And so really getting commitments for that collaboration across our county. And so that will also be part of our rollout. And to add to that, I think one of the recommendations is to really look at finding a coordinating entity. We know that, what's important to people. If you want to know what's important to people, look at their checkbook. And so when we invest resources in economic development, we really need the leadership and that glue that holds our work together to move this forward successfully. And so that's been a very clear message from our consultants and from the work that we've done here too. So looking at how we fund a position that actually is the facilitator that brings everybody along. So lots of work ahead, but we have a near-term plan in place.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Well, thanks to our team here for the work that they've done. I will close with a couple thoughts. For those of you who are not aware, I had our assessor run an analysis of our tax base within the entire county based on levies assessed. We have about a 15% share of our entire tax levy that is supported by commercial businesses and interests. 85% of that is covered by the residential folks that live within this county. And that is, I believe, an unsustainable number to continue if we are as we walk down this agenda of capital projects before us, which will no doubt take some voter agreement on that. We will have to make some significant changes to that ratio. And the second thought I'll leave everyone with is there's a saying, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. So while we certainly could have started this 20 years ago, 30 years ago, even 10 years ago, which we actually had done this plan 10 years ago, we certainly can view this as a time to make some significant changes to have lasting impact on our governments and more importantly, the citizens that live here. So really appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to this tonight, to Jim, to coming here to be a part of this. And I look forward to getting some really strong agreements on this across all of our, as Heidi said, our city governments and our participating organizations. What was that? Thank you.
The next thing on our agenda is the ad hoc committee on homelessness update, and Laura and Heidi have been leading that effort, so I'm going to turn it to them.
Would you like me to start off? You know, okay. I'd be happy to take the lead on that item. So the ad hoc committee on homelessness grew out of one of the first joint meetings in December of 2021. And it was really a response to growing concerns about impacts of homelessness in the community. And so this is a group that was put together with Commissioner Shaughnessy and at the time Mayor Bruce Tabb, and a number of organizations that serve folks who are homeless and other providers across the county to really look at the challenges of meeting the needs of that population, the infrastructure that's required, and some of the legal challenges as well. Out of that has actually grown a number of items. We've taken a look at sort of the cold weather shelter patterns too. It's something that we have just during the winter months, November through March of each year. And one of the items that recently through a Ninth Circuit court case, the court actually made a decision, the Boise decision it's referred to, about the ability of public agencies to actually regulate camping in their public places. And the requirement is that you actually have to have a place to bring people. In our community, we have only a winter shelter. And so looking at our ability to reinforce public health and safety issues to regulate camping in certain locations, we know we need to have a year-round opportunity. And so this group has looked at citing a sleep center, we're calling it. And a sleep center is similar to something they have in Moses Lake or Walla Walla, and looking for the appropriate size and location of that. The county commissioners and the council mid-year last year approved that idea in concept, and we started looking at public properties as part of our work with the ad hoc committee. We have not come up with public properties, and we have some folks who are concerned about having a shelter like this near their part of the community. So we are in the process of reaching out, and one of the items you have at the table today is a scope of work from a consultant. We know we need some help identifying the costs to create such a sleep center, and also to find a location for a sleep center. And so that's sort of an ask of the county commissioners tonight. The cost of the scope of work, we know we need some support with this. Our ad hoc committee doesn't have the time, and we need someone to help us out, is about $40,000. And one of our requests from the county is to fund half of that in the spirit of partnership. And so that would be something we'd leave with today, a request for support. And with that too, what we've recognized is a need to help people in the community understand why this type of facility is important and what it might look like. A group of us actually went to Moses Lake on a field trip to look at their sleep center. We heard from their chief of police and their council and their city manager and their housing staff about the successes of this program and the impacts. And so what we put together from the ad hoc committee is an open house scheduled for March 28th. That'll be held here in this room, and it will be open to all of the service providers that have been serving on the ad hoc committee. And so Hope Source and Merit and a number of other folks, along with a demonstration of what a sleep center is. And so it's an opportunity to educate the community on what a sleep center is. And if you've looked at the Moses Lake facility, you can see that there's a clean, safe, actually, nice looking facility that's really well run. And so opportunity for people to ask questions, and we'll work on helping with some testimonials and having law enforcement present as well. So helping people understand why this is important and how we need to move forward into the future with citing a facility. So anything to add, Commissioner Shaughnessy?
Just some of the other, I know you touched on the stakeholders in the committee. Law enforcement has also been a partner and has been a part of that top committee as well. So they've been part of the conversation. And the Moses Lake law enforcement has been heavily engaged in what's going on there. And so they've been able to have conversations with one another about logistics and how it may work if something like this were to be in this committee.
So, a side conversation and something identified with the ad hoc committee too is the lack of crisis beds, crisis stabilization beds in our community. And so there's been a side conversation with a number of participants in that group, in addition to our EMS services, about how can we take advantage of some of the grants and funding out there for crisis beds, and what are the true needs in our community. So we have law enforcement and EMS and KVH and the county commissioners and city coming together to look at partnering and making sure that we can support those goals too. So it's been a some really healthy discussions about the gaps in services in our program and how we can better work together to meet some of those needs. So, and I could just add a piece. Hope Source has been an active participant at the table, and they keep the numbers and do contacts with the folks who use the cold weather shelter. And they have seen an increase this last season in use of the shelter. The numbers previously on it, they had nightly visits in the 13 to 15 range. They're seeing 18 to 20 pretty consistently this year. And one of the unique things I think a number of us thought was interesting is that there were 63 different individuals who have used the overnight cold weather shelter since November of this year. And so there's a fair number of people who move in and through the community with those services. And the other report was the early numbers for the point in time count, which is done at the end of January every year. They had 12 unsheltered individuals and across 9 families, including 1 child and 2 females. And so those numbers are, I believe, up slightly too from previous years.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the affordable housing project update. And again, I turn to Laura and Heidi for that.
Okay, excellent. So actually I think most of the items on this list are ours. And when we put together the agenda for this meeting, because again, mentioned in or with our president from CW talking about housing affordability is an issue. It's been an issue in Ellensburg and across the county, and it's not going away. And pretty proud of Ellensburg having really taken a number of actions. We have the sales tax for affordable housing that was passed in 2016, and we're starting to make investments. And we've done some surplus property for affordable housing and also adopted a housing action plan and starting to do some implementation. So some very specific projects. We have about 90 units of affordable housing kind of in the queue right now within the city. The first is Stuart Meadows. That was the 18 Habitat for Humanity homes. That was a project that the city donated through surplus property from one of our utilities that we no longer needed for affordable housing. And Habitat for Humanity is in the process of permitting 18 homes. They're going to build those 6 at a time. And they also receive some of the city's affordable housing sales tax dollars to help support that project. And we're working with them on a CHIP grant, which is a grant that helps fund infrastructure for affordable housing projects. And so lots of activity there. There's a project that was a surplus property at the First and Pine, and that was a private developer that the city surplus the property, and we are working with that developer on an agreement that was 57 studio units of affordable housing. And in that process, we're a little behind on the timeline for that, but we're hoping that will move forward fairly soon. And then the most recent is the former Catherine Park. It's adjacent to KXLE Radio. One of the items identified in the housing action plan is we don't have a lot of missing middle type housing. So townhouses, cottage style houses. So when the council surplused that piece of property, they wanted to look for opportunities for a cottage style development for affordable housing. And so there were two that Affordable Housing Commission reviewed 2 letters of interest. There was one from Habitat for Humanity and one from a private developer. And then the private developer did step out last night at their meeting. The Affordable Housing Commission recommended to move forward the project for cottage housing from Habitat for Humanity. So that will be going before council fairly soon. And then the project that the city and county both partnered on with the Knights Inn, they're moving forward with their plans to rehab that facility. And that at the time was 32 hotel rooms, and they're looking to make that into 15 to 16 residential units. And so there's some pretty significant updates they need to make to that facility, but they're in the process of doing that. And then we understand that very recently, Hope Source is actually working on a grant to purchase through a private developer. I think they're calling it Pine Studios, also sort of adjacent to the First and Pine area. And it's housing for transitional housing, primarily for youth. And that will be 19 units with a live-in person there as well. So really sort of we have a scattered site style service for lots of our transitional services within the community. And then our city has been working on implementing the housing action plan. One of the items our staff is just picking up now is a number of communities have done this, is adopting automatically approved ADUs. And so we'll have permitted auxiliary dwelling unit plans that folks can actually, that are pre-approved, that they can pick up and actually just use. And so we're working with other communities who have put those together and adopted those, and that will be coming this next year. So, and it was the county, there's an item on the county was looking for, or working on the free house plans. Is that,
Yeah, okay, we were doing that as well. So, yeah, so similar to what the city is doing, but unfortunately now, due to Growth Management Act regulations, we can't have ADUs in the county. But we are looking at master plans as well for county residents to be able to have pre-approved plans that they are able to pick up and be able to use at various snow loads, because we have a number of snow loads across Kittitas County as well. So there'll be different versions available. But it should save customers roughly around $10,000 to not have to go in and get drawings engineered, and they will be of an affordable nature, how the design is actually designed. So we are in the process of working on that as well. I also did want to just share Kittitas County is supporting Senate Bill 5357. It actually would allow for ADUs outside the urban growth areas. And it did get passed through the House, and it is in the Senate right now. They're debating it right now, or the committee is anyways. Kittitas County's Homeless and Affordable Housing Committee, we have drafted a letter that the committee is planning to send to the Senate as well, so that it is showing that it is an actual housing need that will help with limited housing we have in our rural areas. So if members of the city have interest in that bill as well, I just recommend you take a look and check it out. And of course, we would love your support.
Are there any questions on housing?
I guess I'd just like to point out that in addition to the partnerships, private industry is also stepping up, and it looks like the Motel 6 is going to be converted into similar type units and likely lower on the end of the cost structure. So it's not just the partnerships. We have some private people looking at things that are kind of innovative.
And I'll just point out, I mean, the city continues to work on our zoning codes and land use rules to make sure we're not getting in the way where we don't have to be. So
I had a question for Commissioner Osadas. You're not only our homelessness and affordable housing chair, you're also our District 2 commissioner. The sleep center that's being proposed here, you see it as a countywide benefit for
It would need
our
to
Upper
be,
County.
yes,
Okay, thank you for that.
it would need to be.
anything else? So the next discussion is public facilities, and we have some ambitious plans for the community, from both the city and county, that will require significant amounts of money, for investments, and I know they're all shared goals, and so I think this is a time when we might, well, talk about how we can work together on those things. So I'm, again, going to turn to Heidi to articulate those.
Happy to do so. So the first on the list is the community center, and we've heard from council that has been out talking through their neighborhood cafes pre-pandemic and since. And a common theme that comes out is this community is lacking indoor recreation space. And that was even before we lost the Racket Center in a fire on December 2nd. So the council over the last year we called it the Year of Parks, and to really start looking at what recreation facilities we have, how we fund recreation, and knowing that we need to do something different into the future. If the community is interested in more resources, we need to pay for them in some way too. And we want to make sure that we're building something and we're funding in a way that we can actually operate it as well. So the community center is an idea that would be that would take new revenue. About 10 years ago, the city went through a process to site a community center at Mountain View Park. And it's essentially sitting on one of the master plans, but not without funding, and then also without what's in it and what kind of programs are in it. And so the work that was done 10 years ago, I think the world has changed a little bit since then, and our community has grown pretty significantly. And so our goal is to really launch on a 2-year plan to look at what are the needs in the community, not just from a recreation facility, but the city also has a senior center that used to be a church. We have a youth center that used to be a grocery store. We have a 40-plus-year-old pool that needs some pretty significant investments. And so we have lots of facilities that are being used for a purpose that they weren't built for. They're aging, and we have folks that are saying we need spaces. There's also especially in the city of Ellensburg, a group of folks who've been working on expanding the creative sector through an arts and cultural alliance. It's a volunteer kind of group of folks who've been working together to say, how can we really create more spaces for artists, for performances, things like that. And so that planning work is going on. Centrifuge actually secured a planning grant from CURB to study some of those specifically. So there are lots of interests about community gathering spaces and community spaces. And we think the larger the number of people who want to contribute, the longer the planning process. But we also know all of those voices are important. So we're setting out on a 2-year plan or 2-year process to start planning and hearing from those community members and looking at the data about what our community is interested in and what they're willing to support. Because again, this is an item that would take some new revenue to build a facility and operate it. So that is our goal. There's really no ask with this. It's more of an awareness. And we're not sure that the siting at Mountain View Park is appropriate anymore. There might be a better location that really serves the community better. So really all the current facilities are kind of on the table. And so we're sort of starting from what does the community want? What's the best investment for where we are, and how do we get there together?
Can I just add it's kind of a question for the commissioners. If such a facility were cited at Memorial Park, would there be any interest in allowing shared parking? Which parking is going to be it's going to have to be a fairly large parking lot, and that's a hurdle for the construction of such a facility. And so just want to plant the seed and get folks thinking about what that might look like
That's for the community center?
for the community center, which is 2 years out, 2 years of talking. So, but if we start talking about possibly Memorial Park, I want you guys to have that heads up.
No, thank you for that. That would certainly be, I think, a key focus for us as far as real estate, about even how we manage the event center into the future based on some of the planning we've had. So, yeah, we certainly want to have a piece of that discussion with our folks who run the event center. But yeah, I think, I don't know, we're open to any discussion.
Yeah.
Just to see where we go.
And then there's the field house, which there's a handout. Yeah. I'll turn to Heidi again.
So wait, happy to do so. So this is probably a very aggressive plan, but this is also trying to listen to the community sentiment. So again, on December 2nd, we lost a pretty significant indoor recreation facility, and it was about a 32,000 square foot facility. Again, suspected arson. And so what we heard from the community and what we've been hearing from the community is we have a lack of indoor recreation spaces. And there are some pretty significant potential health impacts that can come from that long term as well. The field house concept actually came from a group of private citizens, Rotarians, and who've been shopping the idea around for a couple of years. And the idea is similar to the facilities that the Racket Center had. It's about indoor sports and fitness areas for really a multi-use. And so part of the facility would be courts, flexible courts for different sports. The other would be flexible turf, and walking tracks are often part of those. And so a number of communities across the state have these. We have a location at Rotary Park on this, essentially the south side of the baseball fields. That could be a perfect location. It's city owned. And we know that there's a community need and an opportunity. The city will be receiving some insurance funds from the fire and for replacement, and we want to reinvest those as quickly as we possibly can. So the other 2-year time frame we're on is to try to fund a facility. We have operational expenses for the Racket Center built into our budget, and so we can continue with those. And so our goal is to fund this with revenue. We don't want to bond. We want to try to fund it up front and really rebuild an indoor recreation facility within the next 2 years. And so we are asking, and here's our other ask. I should have warned you, we're going to ask the county for some money tonight. So I know that the county has been at the table while the private sector folks have been talking about the field house concept. And we know that our users for the Racket Center and our users at Rotary Park are very much countywide, and it's definitely a resource that's used across the community, our communities. And so we are requesting some financial support from the county and to help us really truly deliver on this facility for our people. And so again, we believe that we sat down with our staff. If we can fund it, we believe we can build about 100,000 square foot facility. That's a pretty big facility. At Rotary Park, we're starting the master planning process to site that and place the parking this next month. And we believe that we can be on a fast track to really do construction by the end of 2024. So we will be reaching out in the one sheet that you have is our one sheet for our legislative request. And we will be moving forward, just requesting some capital funding to match. We'll still have depending on what the county is willing to match with the city, we'll still have a gap, and we're hoping for some community support with that as well. So this is truly a partnership opportunity, and we would ask for your partnership in that facility.
Is there any questions on the field house? So in money flowing the other direction, the county had come to us a while back and asked for money for the rodeo grounds. And the city had said that we would defer requesting any 0.09 funding. And I think through the economic development discussion, there's been talk about using those funds in other ways than has been done in the past, not just allocating among the cities. And so I think the ask is that the city reconsider that. And Corey, do you want to?
Yeah, I appreciate that. The initial letter came also with an understanding that you're open to other options. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and we'll launch into the rodeo arena with Brett, but in a minute with the advocacy part of it. But yeah, I thank you for bringing that up yourself, because I think it's important to show that we are each invested in those facilities that benefit both parties. We certainly, I think, want to have an understanding how much is being asked for. I believe that we're open to that discussion, because we need to articulate the benefits for unincorporated residents, as you pointed out, and also have a discussion about what funding mechanisms could be tapped into to help do this. So I think at this time, the answer is a yes. Let's have a discussion and figure out what can be done, but ensure that while city residents get the use and it's maintained by the city, county residents also have that opportunity to use it on an equitable basis.
I think the easy ask on that is a letter of support to the legislature for that funding, but maybe that's not easy because you have your own request, but
We can ask for it.
yeah. We can.
That's not just what answer we get.
Are we talking about the field house though?
If we will be asking the legislature for funding for the 9 million for the field house, and would love your support on in terms of a letter, as well as potential funding.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure we're not committing, or I'm not committing to anything.
No,
tonight.
we're committed to a discussion to understand what is being asked for, but yes.
But in terms of rodeo, did you want to say more about those facilities?
I could give a brief overview of where we're at and where we came and where we expect to go, if you'd like to, really quick.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, so since 2016, this county and the rodeo have partnered together on being 50% funders for the design of the renovation project down at the rodeo arena. And historically, the city of Ellensburg, the county, and the rodeo have been a three-way partner in the major capital asks down there. So just on behalf of the board, I know we've talked about it already, but I just want to say thank you to the city for the letter that you got to us a couple months ago for your side of the support. I did want to just update everybody. There's been an unofficial, I guess, what we would call it, a team meeting that's been made up of city representatives, city staff, county reps, and rodeo representatives. And last spring, that group gave an update presentation to city council during one of your study sessions. And now we're working on getting that group back together and going over to Olympia to meet with our state representatives and senators to push forward the ask from the county as to why it's important, and hopefully share with them our vision of, again, where we've gone, where we're at, and where we hope to go. We all know that the Ellensburg Rodeo celebrates its 100 years this year. I know that the city has a committee together to do a mural on the water tower, which I think is pretty cool. So when we made a visit back in 2018, that's similar to what we envisioned this year being, but really missing piece, I feel like, from the county side is we didn't have the city support. And I feel like that will further the project and hopefully gain some more support. I did just want to note that, you know, the Ellensburg Rodeo is always the ones that are touted that use the facilities, which is true for Labor Day. But I did want to highlight, you know, we do see the high school rodeo participates down there. Katie was able to bring them back. We have the college rodeo, obviously Cowboy Cross after Labor Day weekend. Daniel Beards, Bears and Bronx have been down there. And then we, this year, will have the 4th concert for Patriot Night Under the Lights down there. And then Ellensburg Rodeo has also brought back their concert series. So it's more than just the rodeo, but the rodeo has been a strong partner with the county and city. And between that partnership, we have roughly half our ask, which is about $7 million. So we're not going empty-handed to the legislature, but I do appreciate that it is a big ask. And then I did just want to briefly update everybody that doesn't know. I also think it's important to note that the rodeo adopts a capital plan as well to improve the county's facilities down there. And this year they're replacing the livestock pens on the grounds. They're also improving the Western Village by expanding what they call the sponsorship room. And then they've also renovated some posse barns and the announcer booth when it needed repairs for safety and other preventative maintenance upgrades. So that is just a quick overview. I hope to get everyone up to speed. I didn't have a presentation or a one pager to provide everybody, but if there's questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
If you don't mind, can you talk about, has the funding changed or has the request to the legislature changed?
The longer we talk about it, the more expensive it gets. Back in 2016, looking at the numbers, we would, based on the 3-way with the city, county and rodeo, we could have fully funded it between the 3 of us. And now it's pretty much doubled in price. It's gone from roughly a little more than $7 million to a little more than $14 million. So the sources of funds has not changed. The county has been supportive of funding it from some of our special revenue. As we just discussed earlier in our meeting tonight, it sounds like the city is willing to explore options. And then it's been a big ask from the rodeo. They have come to the table with a support letter of about $250,000 a year to help service any debt that we potentially go out for. So that's a huge ask as well.
And is that still the amount that you're requesting from the city for debt service?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think one of the sources that we've discussed would be turning to lodging tax funds. And I think we need to, you know, of course, ask the lodging tax committee if they support that too, so that, you know, there's a process that we need to kind of move through to see how much extra there is in that pot.
Mhm.
Of course, you know, barring any more pandemics that close hotels, but I think that's probably the pot we would be looking at.
So, and I'm just asking, is there a way from the city's perspective to, you know, look at some of the plan review and design costs that would be associated with that as, you know, potentially to offset some of those costs? Or is that not on the table? And
From an administrative perspective, that could be on the table. I don't think it's going to be significant, though.
Okay.
No.
Any other thoughts on rodeo grants and supporting each other? The next item on the agenda is the airport facilities, the counties, and I just want to say from myself, sitting on the county's airport advisory committee, I've appreciated the county's investment in that facility over the last few years in terms of personnel anyway, and equipment. And it is, I think most people would say, in much better shape than it was several years ago. But it is come to my attention that there's a potential hurdle for investing in the business park, Bowers Business Park. And that is the city's outside utility agreement, which extended the utilities to the park. And also in that agreement, the county agreed that the city could annex at any time. And we know that those lots are owned by the county and leased for development, and the developer would, or leasee pays for the cost of their own building. I think it's a stretch to ask them to pay for curb gutter sidewalk. But I've heard from a number of people that there is a concern that the county would pay for that curb gutter sidewalk, and then the city would come in and annex. And so I guess I would propose, if the commissioners are agreeable to it, some sort of interlocal agreement that pretty much says we're not going to do that, or we're going to pay back whatever investments you've made, or something. I think we could agree on some language. I mean, I don't think that the city is interested at this moment in annexing that land, but I can't speak for future council members. And so having that agreement in writing, if that makes it easier for the county to make those investments, those capital investments that are needed in order to develop that property, I'm willing to do that. And there's 6 other people that have to agree.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say yes. I mean, there are concerns, because, you know, there's history, right? I think that there's also other, parts of it that, besides the curb gutter issue, the amount of time and investment the county's put into the wetland mitigation, has been significant. So I think I think, yes, we need to have a further conversation later to that.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I appreciate that offer, because I think you're recognizing something that is right. We have not fulfilled the agreement that was signed in 2009, but had significant investment from the city to run those utilities out there. We also recognize that facility has stalled for a time, and we are getting off of top dead center, I believe, out there in terms of moving forward. Right now, we recognize we've made some strides out there on the air side. We have an FBO coming. We have, as Commissioner Shaw has pointed out, wetland mitigation taking place within the aeronautical portion of the airport, which will open up the next phase, which will be a parallel taxiway construction. All of these move on to a more efficient airport process. The kind of the outlier here is that how do we get that non-aeronautical part moving forward? And that's going to be the discussion that's taking place right now with the county and our engineering partner, to say, all right, give us an understanding with data and other airport performance. Where do we need to invest our money? We need to have that targeted investment. Is it within the aesthetics, the curb gutter sidewalk? Is it commercial space that's ready to go to be leased? Or is it infrastructure? Because besides the aeronautical portion that has the wetland mitigation taking place as part of the FAA's capital improvement program, we also have all that external outside of the aeronautical part that needs to have that wetland and flood encumbrances removed, which can be done at significant expense, but we need to have that again, I appreciate that, and I think we as a group don't want to risk investment out there that gets snapped out from under us. So thank you for offering that. I think on our side, we need to put that plan together so you have a clear understanding, as we've talked about with master plans and strategic plans. It's really easy to get one going. If you don't identify the funding that goes with it, it really doesn't go anywhere. As our, some of our 2016 master plan for the event center, same thing. Now, we did get a bowling alley out of it, which I think is the best news anybody's heard in the county for a while. But we need to assign, if we're going to move forward, we need to have that funding in place. So that gives you the peace of mind that there is a plan moving forward. And again, it's all subject to those who follow us, whether to follow that or not. But if we can get something which you can believe in, then we can believe in the fact that we can invest in it without the fear that we're going to have it annexed by the city. So I think there's a good process in place to move forward. We need to get that plan out and start those discussions. So thank you for that, though, for opening that.
Any other thoughts or questions on the airport? Okay. So next on our agenda is the interlocal agreement update. And
I'd
Go
be
ahead.
happy to do that one as well. So I believe the interlocal agreement in December of 2021 is what brought us to our very first joint meeting. And so there were a number of actions that were in process to take place throughout the year. And the county had two sort of docket items that they needed to work through. One was the public works standards and adopting the impact fees and the city's, again, public works standards through their code. And the other was to work through the land development code. And I believe it's the end of the year. You all approved the land development. I think it's in your Title 17 and some language. And so and then I believe that we both extended the interlocal agreement to have an effective date as the end of the June of this year. So we had additional time to work out the street standards. And my understanding is that our staff have met with Director Cook and actually a group of private folks who have been working on recommendations for road standards over the last few years. And looked at the potential of the county adopting urban growth area, public works standards or road design standards for all of the urban growth areas across the county. And Director Cook is welcome to join me here and add to that discussion if you'd like. And I believe the recommendation came out of that group that it doesn't really make sense to adopt a countywide urban growth area road design standards, because what works in Ellensburg might not be the same standards that would work in Cle Elum or in Rosalind or in Kittitas. And so we've spent a lot of time developing our standards, and using those would be good. One of the challenges that we talked about working through is what if it doesn't make sense for a specific contractor or developer to make those investments based on their proximity to utilities, and so that they might not be required through a utility extension agreement. And so the process they came up with as a recommendation, again, this is in concept, I believe, is that they could do a preserve the road corridors, which was the intent of the interlocal agreement, and then also have an agreement that a no protest agreement essentially. And so it would put the burden of those improvements on the city through a local improvement district down the road if there was enough development that happened. And so that would, instead of what we have a mechanism in our rules, it's called a deferment. And if it doesn't make sense to do some of the improvements, we can defer some of those improvements through an administrative action. But the requirement to make those improvements runs with the land. And so that really creates a burden on the potential property owner and in some property owners. So for sale of a property, it might restrict that. And so our staff were supportive of moving forward with this alternative idea with and then again, the county adopting the city's road standards. And so I believe there's some edits that are moving forward with the county Title 12. And then also we met with the group that's been meeting about the interlocal agreement for a period of time. So Commissioner Wagsmith and Mayor Lilquist and both of our staffs, and work through some of the Title 17 changes that the county made at the end of the year. And we walked through a process to request some edits to that. One, there were some edits to some language that actually would sort of undo the intent of the interlocal agreement. And the intent is to actually preserve the road corridors in the community and also be able to collect impact fees and again, ensure that the roads and facilities were designed appropriately. So we're requesting, and we'll work through an administrative process to make that request for your code. And then within the code that was adopted, there's also an expectation that the city would provide notice if we made any changes. And we believe that that should be in the interlocal agreement. And we think we would love for that to be both ways. And so our recommendation is to actually do another edit to the interlocal agreement, as well as a request to update the code, and we'll be happy to work with you on that. The final issue was impact fees. It's not a program that the county has right now. And so we have a staff work group working on how can maybe we collect those on an interim basis if and as the county develops their own sort of standards. And it could be just for UGAs, or it could be something broader. We do have some experience. Our staff have worked through that process of developing those, and we're certainly happy to help out staff to the extent that we can to facilitate that work.
Any questions about the interlocal agreement?
My questions are for Director Cook. That lines up with our work on our side as well for the progress that is being made on this agreement.
Yeah, Commissioner, Councilors, Cook, Public Works Director. The conversation we had with city staff is very productive. It seems like a very mature approach. This way we can guarantee consistent growth for the city vision of what your urban streets sections look like. But do it in a way that doesn't handicap someone in the UGA developing in the absolute utility. So I just want to thank you for the cooperative approach to the solution that seems to make a lot of sense to us. So again, that's what I have for you, Commissioner.
Thank you. You guys are the guinea pigs, because you're not the only one that wants a UGA. We have others wanting the same program. So thanks for working through these details with us.
It's been a long time that the city's been working on this through a number of different commissioners. And mayors. And but I think I was there for the first discussion about it when Commissioner Bowen was on board. Anyway, we appreciate the willingness to work through the nitty-gritty details, because, you know, in my mind, it's this big concept that we should have this agreement, but
Sure.
it takes staff to actually implement, and it wasn't as easy as I thought it might be. Next on our agenda is the floodplain mapping update, and Heidi, if you want to.
Absolutely.
finish
And this is just more notice for the commissioners. So the work that the County Flood District has been doing to map the different creek systems that run through our community. I know that the FEMA had requested whether or not the city was participating. And so we sent a letter to you saying, we don't believe this is the best method to map our community. And so we didn't want to participate in that. And the assurance is we are interested in having some better predictive maps for flooding. And so we've actually met with County Staff Director Cook and looked at a potential of a 3D mapping of our community, which would be a much better set of data to actually predict where flooding happens in our community. And so if we're going to update our flood maps, we'd like some good data that reflects what we know to be the reality. And our city, our alluvial fan in our valley makes it incredibly difficult. And with the irrigation ditches that run through our community too, that adds an added complexity to mapping. So our goal is to, and actually in fact, Director Cook through the Flood District has agreed to support us with a match. And so we're going to try to face or to chase some FCAP dollars, which are some federal funding to map our community. And so we can actually have some better data. And so just some assurance that we're working on that. I think it's an important step And we think that, again, taking that three-dimensional look at our community will be very beneficial. So more of an update than an idea.
I think from our side, we have a strong investment in the flood insurance program, the National Flood Insurance Program. And we recognize that the work that's gone in benefits all county residents, and you certainly as a municipality chart your own course and want the best available data there. And I think we all share a desire to see a minimal amount of floodplain within the county borders encumbered by floodplain designation. I hope that when this is done and you get this data, that it gives you what you need to be able to make potentially tough decisions. Hopefully not. Hopefully it gives you exactly what you're looking for. But through this, getting to the end of this road and finding that data necessary, we can align on how we pursue that joint approach to compliance with the NFIP. Because it's a good program. We worked hard and gone through some pain points at the county as well to make sure that we're maximizing the benefit to our citizens. So look forward to getting the results of that.
Any questions on flooding? Comments? Well, that concludes our agenda. Is there anything else for the good of the order? If there's no further business, the city council is adjourned.
And the commissioners are, I guess we use the word concluded, but thank you for this time. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, let's do it.